out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. I am the somewhat famous George Harvey, and this is the very famous Tom Fennell.
Hi, folks.
And we talk about the energy of the previous week every week. Record on Thursday mornings, and I have a blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. You can go there and see the stories that we're talking about, and follow the date, and I try to remember to give the name of the organization that provided the news, and you can go there and see, get the full story. And this week things are a little bit different because of Christmas. We had to record on Tuesday morning, so we've only got 5 days news, and I believe
I didn't realize till about 6:30 last
night.
Oh no! Oops.
But the other thing is, I don't think we have a broadcast next week.
I don't think we do either.
So the following,
unless you got a crystal ball, we can't have one.
Yeah, the following week we're going to have to do 16 days of news in 1 hour.
Well, do we have to do 16 days?
Oh, we have to cover everything. I'll just take the stuff that comes.
I was thinking maybe you
important.
could have the best of the year.
We're going to do that again too. We did that last year, at the beginning of this year, but we did it in January.
We did it as a special.
Yep. Anyway, we are ready to go, and so what we're starting with here is material that is dated December 17th, Thursday, and this is from Times Live. More than 200,000 homes in South Africa are receiving power from the world's largest storage solar farm in Uppington in the Northern Cape. Just 2 years after the start of construction, the ACWA Sol Africa Bokpoort CSP power plant is now operating at full capacity ahead of schedule.
Now, Uppington is right near Downington, isn't it?
I think it's, they're not next door. I think Middlington is right between them.
I might just mention, a CSP is a concentrated solar power as opposed to photovoltaic.
Well, concentrated solar power.
It's a very different concept.
Yeah, it can actually be. So you can concentrate and go to special solar photovoltaic cells.
You could, but that's generally not what they mean.
It's not generally what they do.
It's
and
more
here,
thermal than anything else.
Here what we've got is two troughs, and if you look kind of closely in the middle of those troughs, you'll see pipes running down them. And when the sun comes out, those things will invert from the position that they're in now. They'll be in the
pointing in the wrong direction.
They're pointing at the ground, and above that you can see the Milky Way, and I believe the two Magellanic Clouds, which are kind of mini galaxies or something.
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Anyway, that is that. Our next item comes from echobusiness.com, and it is China is missing no opportunity to build a future without fossil fuels, abroad as well as at home. It is investing in the construction of the UK's first nuclear power plant in 20 years, but most Chinese energy investment is in renewables, and it has decided to support developing solar power in France.
Well, this is an interesting concept. What's happening?
Click it up, Tom.
We can. Okay.
There you go.
For a second, the Chinese, or the, how would you say it, the marketplace, isn't providing sufficient investment in England and France for these kinds of things.
So it comes from China.
And the Chinese have a little bit extra bread.
Yeah.
I don't know how they get it, I don't know.
I don't know.
They got a little different, and they're getting into this, and they're investing in renewable energy throughout Europe.
Now, this thing is also concentrating solar power. just like the thing that we had a moment ago.
This is doing the same thing in a very different way.
In a very different way.
Explain how it works.
Well, if you look in the lower right-hand corner of that picture, you can see things that they look like little pieces of wall or something. They're actually mirrors.
They're mirrors, right?
They're flat mirrors. They're not parabolic.
Okay.
And they shine those mirrors on the parabola that you can see in the middle of the screen. And that parabola is pretty big. I'm going to guess it's more than 10 stories tall. And
I would guess it's certainly large.
Yeah, and the parabolic mirror in the middle shines the light, concentrating it on the top of that building that's in the middle there. And that building has what is called a solar oven in it. And that is used for a variety of purposes. You can use a solar oven like this to make electricity using the kind of system that we just saw, where
using steam.
Yeah, or you could melt salt, and the salt can go into a reservoir somewhere, and in some cases they've got power from these things 24/7, because they just have that salt providing heat over a very well regulated period, and in this case I don't know what they use this for, but they use them for chemicals. They use them for making nano carbon, the graphene.
Yeah, nanotechnology, real new stuff.
Real new stuff, stuff that when I was in school, nobody knew that those things even existed.
Now these flat reflectors,
yeah,
are they following the sun too?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
they're what are called heliostats.
Okay.
And the heliostat. There's a company in Vermont that makes heliostats up in Norwich. I think it's called Norwich Technologies, and they make tracking heliostats and tracking solar systems.
Well, that's almost the same thing.
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost. They move. That's right, but differently. They move differently.
Interesting. Not a takeaway, a byproduct here. The Chinese investor.
Yeah.
In this particular case, is the China General Nuclear Power Corporation, which is owned by the government.
Yes, of course.
Okay. It's the same company that's helping the French build a nuclear plant in Britain.
Yes, of
at
course.
Hinkley.
Yes.
Which you and I think isn't ever going to happen.
Well, yeah, it's too expensive, and there's the government of the UK is not going to last forever in its current form, and that Hinkley plant is, if it's typical of nuclear plants, it's going to come in 6 or 8 years behind schedule, and it's going to come in.
You're an optimist.
Yeah, right. and it's already costing enough that you could probably build. Well, the day they announced how much it was going to cost, the UK solar industry was up in arms saying you could get solar power a whole lot cheaper than that, along with batteries, and have the whole thing going and have it built 3 times as fast. And why aren't you using solar instead of this?
There's a hidden backstory here.
Well, probably.
Yeah. Somebody with good connections is making out.
I think that is the case. I'm very suspicious of the current UK government. I think that they've got hidden agendas that are just
pretty well hidden.
I don't know that they're well hidden. The ways that they're manifesting themselves are pretty obvious. And building Hinkley C is one of them. But shutting down support for onshore wind and for rooftop solar. They had promised only a year ago that they were going to do extensive rooftop solar. They said we're not going to allow you solar in big fields anymore. We want to discourage that, but we'll put up a lot of solar on rooftops. And now they're saying they don't want that either. And
something's going on there that we don't understand.
The suspicion that I've got is what they want is big companies to have big systems.
Yeah.
And that is...
Have we heard that one before?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Stalin. Okay. I think we should probably power on to Power Magazine. In a business boost for wind and solar industries, congressional leaders agreed on a multi-year extension of the renewable energy tax credits, which could provide several years of predictable policies encouraging investment in new projects. The tax credits are part of a 2009-page omnibus spending bill.
Well, we'll be talking about this same thing from various aspects several times before we go today.
Yeah, and probably after the new year, too, as a matter of fact.
The only thing I should mention, and we'll get to this later, too, is that these solar tax credits are slowly phased out over the next few years.
Yes, solar and wind.
And wind, yeah.
But they're slowly phased out over a period of 5 years, which I think is exactly the way the thing should be done.
It's probably a good, yeah, it probably is right.
What they have done in exchange for that, well, they've allowed the oil companies to export oil.
Well, there's also millions for research in coal, natural gas, oil, and other fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And nuclear technology.
What they should do to research coal is spend their research money on developing time machines.
Yeah.
Let's go back to an age of the buggy whip. Okay. So our next item from WCAX says Green Mountain Power says it's not supporting plans by a New York company to build a giant solar farm in the town of Ludlow, Vermont. The 20-megawatt Coolidge project would be by far the largest solar farm in the state.
Yeah, GMP, 20 is large.
Yeah, it is. GMP, the governor, and others think the project is out of scale with Vermont's energy needs.
Well, that's the objection. It's too big.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the whole story.
Well, for now, I'll take them at their word.
Yeah, I think I'll do that too.
They're getting a lot of heat from the top on this one.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know what to think of it. I would have thought that GMP would not have been.
Well, I think the article says something about where it's located. They want it closer to where it's used.
Yes.
And Ludlow is in the middle of nowhere.
Yes. Yes. And that makes a certain amount of sense.
There, but
yeah, it makes a certain amount of sense. Okay. We are up to Friday, December 18th. And from Clean Technica.
Back on the same subject.
After many long months of deliberations and lobbying, the U.S. Congress has approved a 5-year extensions to the hugely successful investment tax credit, which has given incentives for solar power projects, and to the production of the production tax credit, which has similarly supported the country's wind energy industry. And you know, this is a subject that is just, this is a different article. If you want to look it up, you can go to the blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. Find this. It'll have a different take than the one that we just had.
It's the same story.
It's the same story.
A different viewpoint.
Yeah.
A different angle.
Yep.
A little takeaway from this is solar and wind companies have seen their stock values increase on the news of the tax credit.
Yes.
not surprised.
But you know, I've seen so much in the news come through because I look at the news every day. I usually see 400 or so headlines on average, and I've seen people complaining about this omnibus bill, saying that it's a scam. I've seen oil industry people gloating over it, saying this is going to revive the oil industry, which I don't believe for a minute. Well, you know, all right,
there are things happening in the oil industry that they didn't anticipate when they pushed for this.
Yeah, and one thing they didn't anticipate was that they were going to have to sell that oil at a price that was the world market price, which is too low. So they're not, I don't know that they're able to compete on the world market, but perhaps we should move on. Our next item, also from Clean Technica, says German wind power is at record levels. Its production tied with lignite burning power plants in the month of November. Both were reported to have generated 11.4 terawatt hours.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah. Though the final official stats won't be published until 2016. For the month, wind generated about 23% of the German electricity.
Well, it's interesting, this lignite. We don't burn much lignite in the U.S. We do burn some.
Yeah.
It's brown coal, we call it. It's very, very
dirty.
And the Germans, to a great degree, are exporting the power that they're generating with lignite.
Right.
And they use renewables for themselves. But I would not bet my money on a new lignite mine.
Well, they have other problems with lignite, aside from the fact that it's dirty. And one of those problems is that it's very cheap. And that is a problem for generating power because it is too cheap to move. If your power plant isn't near the lignite mine, then it's too far away. They don't want to run these things through the rail system constantly. Anthracite coal has got a lot of value, and you can ship it all over the world. But lignite, you got to use locally.
You know, putting it in a little bit of perspective. In Ireland, they generate electricity with peat.
Yes.
And lignite is basically one step beyond peat.
One step beyond peat.
And as you just mentioned, the peat has to be near the generating station. They're right in the middle of the peat bogs.
Yep. Almost like Ocean Spray Cranberry's office is right in the middle of the cranberry bogs. my daughter used to work at Ocean Spray. It's an interesting thing because you've got this thing that looks like a Georgian mansion and it's in the middle of purple fields.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. We used to live down there.
By the way, this is a good thing. There's over 1,600 wind turbines in operation in this one German state.
In which state is this? Is this Mecklenburg-Vorpommern?
The article, well, if the article said it said, I didn't get it.
Oh, okay. Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is actually
That's
generating more renewable power than they consume.
Yeah, it's probably that state.
They also burn. One thing about these electric plants, you can't transport the lignite very far, but you can transport the electricity.
Yep.
So,
reading between the lines here, it has to be Mecklenburg because it's saying one German state already generates more than 100% of its electricity from renewables.
Right. Yep.
Wind power plays a prominent role there.
Yes.
Okay. Moving right
along. And I've just got to get my act together. That's what I've got to do. New York State, this is from the Albany Times-Union. New York State regulators approved upgrades to 156 miles of high-voltage transmission lines running from Utica to New York City via the Capital Region, part of the governor's Energy Highway program. Bidding for contracts will be overseen by New York Independent System Operator. So
they're talking about helping to bring 1,000 megawatts of electricity from upstate power plants and renewable energy products to the population center of New York City. It's going on now. I mean, they've been doing that since 100 years.
Yes, they're just
upgrading
it. Yep,
and that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Okay, our next item is from TampaBay.com.
Oh yes.
And I don't know why I got this from Tampa Bay, but I did. On Friday, workers at Britain's last operating deep coal mine finished their final shift.
Of these guys.
Yeah, there you go. Emerging soot blackened and live on television news channels to cheers, applause, and tears. The last haul of coal from the pit is destined for a mining museum as a once mighty industry fades into history.
This movie, or the TV show must have been pretty interesting because the men went down in the mine, 400 of them, all singing the same song. A Tom Jones song called My Delilah. I'm not sure I recognize that song.
I don't know, but miners sing a lot, and one of the things that got Welsh choirs to
the miners,
was the fact that
traditionally sing.
They traditionally sang, and when the Welsh mining industry folded, the Welsh choirs had a more difficult time maintaining their membership. So
my grandfather mined coal in England for a few years.
Yeah.
After he was in the British Army.
Okay.
According to my mother, he was told he had to go there and go to jail.
Oh, there you go.
He was kind of a wild child, from what they say. But anyhow, he got out of the Army. He was mining coal. Didn't like it very much. He went back to Cork, found himself a woman, and they moved to New York.
There you go.
Yeah.
Did he know any Tommy knockers?
I never asked him.
For those who are curious about that, a Tommy knocker is a kind of elf.
Yes, yeah.
A kind of elf or
gremlin,
sprite, whatever,
something like
who
that.
lives in the mines.
Supernatural thing.
And there are groups of miners who would not go into the mines unless the mining companies arranged for good Tommy knockers.
Okay.
And not, in the United States.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and there was a mine in California that was closing down, and the miners in the mine refused to go off work on the last day until the mining company recognized the Tommy knockers and
gave him a pension. Huh?
I don't know what they did, but they had to have some kind of recognition for them. Okay, our next item, Clean Technica. Energy analysts from the UK-based investment bank Barclays gave quick analysis of the results of COP21. Lead analyst Mark Lewis says the implications of the fossil fuel industry are profound and will likely cause it to suffer a loss in revenue of about $33 trillion US out to 2040 over business as usual. This again from Clean Technica.
Quick takeaway here. There is considerable, this guy Lewis that you just mentioned,
yes,
there is considerable investor momentum on the climate risks of listed companies.
Yes.
So the investors are starting to get aware,
yes,
of the effects on climate, and
yes,
it's affecting their investment choices.
It is indeed. And this is something that, the people who are in the fossil fuels industry who've got some kind of wisdom built into them are aware of this. The BP, for example, I remember reading probably over a year ago that BP had already started to factor in coal pricing, carbon taxes into their products.
Well, it makes good business sense.
They've got to be ready for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, our next item, also from Clean Technica, according to the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, wind turbines in Texas set a state record for wind generating electricity of 12.97 gigawatts the day before Thanksgiving, and on Thanksgiving Day itself, wind power in Texas provided 43.55% of the state's total electricity
just
demand.
Wind power, it's almost
just
half.
Wind.
That's interesting. And this
Yes.
is Texas, the oil state.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
And-
this particular, they've had a good fall. They've
Yep.
had some very favorable wind conditions because
Right.
this record follows in the wake of an October 22nd record,
Right.
which itself broke the record that was set the day before.
Well,
They're setting new records almost daily down there.
well, they are, but one thing to bear in mind here, Tom, is that they're adding new wind power constantly. So you would kind of expect them to be setting records.
Well, yeah, but they did have particularly favorable wind conditions.
Yes, they did. No question about
this
it.
fall.
But one of the things that I go back to periodically is a time that I went to Google Earth and I looked at the Roscoe wind farm with Roscoe, Texas in the middle of it.
Oh, yeah.
634
We talked about
turbines.
that.
And you can see the farms there and so forth. And the winter, you can see the wind turbines from space, but you can also see the oil pumps.
Yeah.
And there may be a few of those oil pumps that are still in business.
Oh, sure.
But the overwhelming majority of them are broken down.
They just run for years
Yeah,
and years and years.
but most of them are
remember
just-
going through Ohio and you see a farmer's field and he's got this pump
Yes,
going up and down.
nodding donkey. But most of them are off and derelict or removed or abandoned or whatever.
Now here's something that puts this into perspective.
Okay.
Texas is the 6th biggest producer of wind electricity globally,
Oh, okay.
sitting just behind India and just ahead of the UK.
Wow.
And they're the
There's more?
largest in the States.
Yeah.
California is second, but they're a way poor second.
I don't remember exactly, but my recollection is that I saw figures on one occasion that showed the wind power capacity of Texas in terms of what could be developed, and compared that with the energy demands of the United States for electricity. And Texas was able to provide a multiple of would be able, if it were all developed, a multiple of the American demand for electricity.
So at least theoretically, Texas could power the United States.
Yes.
With ease.
And
just by wind.
If you took the Midwest from Mexico to Canada and from basically the Mississippi River to the Rockies, and you just took that area, you could power the entire world.
Wow.
We've got just incredible resources in this country.
And we're still digging coal?
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Still making a mess with coal too, as a matter of fact. And the people out there love these wind farms. They're living right in the middle of them, and they think they're great. So, all right, I don't mind. Okay, our next piece is from the Malaysian Insider, and it says the U.S. lifted a 40-year-old ban on the export of oil. Now we're back to the Congress, paving the way for energy-deficient countries to import oil. The ban was lifted when President Barack Obama on Saturday signed into law the omnibus $1.8 trillion spending package and tax bill for the current fiscal year ending September 30th, 2016. Now, I don't know what to make of the Malayans treating this as though this was being done at a time when there were countries that were in desperate need of oil and couldn't get it. That's almost the way that sentence sounds. Energy deficient countries are now going to be able to import oil.
That's what the article said. I was questioning
it doesn't feel right to me. No, I don't think it is. Anyway, this is a picture of an oil worker in a refinery in China, and it just kind of gives you a picture of what the inside of a refinery looks like. It looks like a highly specialized, very big chemical plant to me, and I think in fact that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is.
And I'm a person who used to work in chemical plants. There was a time in my life when I had to know the location and use of 1,250 switches and 1,750 valves. And I'm glad I've forgotten all of that.
You see some of these pictures of the system operator's office with stuff all over the walls.
Yeah.
And some guy knows what every one of those things does, you know?
Some guy knows.
At least in theory.
It would be interesting to go into a place like that and see some picture up there, and you say, "What is that?" And the guy says, "I don't know." And you track it down and discover that it's the readouts for the oven temperatures in the local bakery or what.
Interesting takeaway here, though. This article was pretty much about politicians and how they were reacting to this, and they had a lot of quotes. But this is good. The wind and solar credits we added to the omnibus bill. I can't even say it. Eliminated about 10 times more carbon pollution than the export of crude oil will add. That's according to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, and honestly, I think
she's way down. It's going to be much more than that.
I would think.
It's going to be less.
Yeah,
because there's not going to be much.
I don't think there's going to. You never can tell. It might be that the oil people.
37.5 cents a barrel. We're not going to export much.
I think it's $37.50.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't mind. I think every single person watching knew exactly what you meant. You knew what you meant.
I knew what I meant.
Okay. Our next item, Vermont Technical College.
Yeah, we're back home.
Yeah. In Randolph, Vermont, will use more renewable energy to reduce the operating costs while providing new educational opportunities with the installation of a 500 kilowatt solar farm. The solar farm has its certification of public good and may be completed by February.
That's quick.
Solar Novus today.
They got to be working today.
Well, but the thing, this is one of the things. If you've got the permitting and you've got the materials, you can just install it. And it's not like a nuclear plant or a coal burning plant or something like that. It's a very fast.
Now, a little bit about the technology here. This is pretty good. There's 100 of these 5 kilowatt dual axis solar trackers.
Okay.
Okay, which are made by All Earth Renewables.
All Earth Renewables
of Williston, Vermont.
Yep. David
Bittersdorf.
Yeah.
Who is a big supporter of renewable power in Vermont.
Of all kinds.
Of all kinds.
Yes. And he writes for Green Energy Times very often. I think every issue he has an article in there. I write for Green Energy Times, so nobody should be surprised that I know that.
So it's all tied in with education here.
Yes.
I mean, it's providing power to the school, but it's also hands-on experience for the students.
Right.
And Vermont Technical is moving in this direction. They're tailoring their electrical curriculum to this. They're going to be a noted operator in this field in a few years. I mean, we'll be coming to Vermont Tech to learn PV.
Yeah.
And this is going to be this is part of the reason. So it's all around this move, I think.
Yes. We're up to Sunday, December 20th. And this comes from the Financial Express. With the big animals gone forever, climate change could get worse, according to a study. University of East Anglia research says a decline in fruit-eating animals, such as large primates, tapirs, and toucans, could have a knock-on effect of tree species because they disperse seeds.
By eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By eating. And
this is one of those ecological things that they talk about that you don't think of, the second order consequences.
Yeah.
It's not only that some of the forests aren't being renewed, but they're being renewed by the wrong kinds of trees.
Yes. Well, that's been going on.
Instead of these large trees that absorb a lot of carbon, there are a lot of junk trees. I would say similar to sumac.
Well, yeah, I always thought of sumac as junk trees, and I used to look at it and say, if that stuff was hard to grow, you'd go to a nursery and buy it.
Well, so they can be pretty.
They can be very pretty. But the other thing, they have that kind of wonderful umbrella effect, and they kill all the weeds under them. So there's just grass down there, which makes them look very neat and tidy. But on top of that, their fruit has value.
The what?
Their fruit has value.
Yeah, you can. I know you can make like lemonade out of it.
Yeah. So why are we down on sumac?
Well, when I was a kid, it was all poison sumac. Don't touch it.
Yeah. Oh well. Okay. Yahoo 7 News. Delhi has been shrouded in a toxic soup in recent weeks, pushing PM 2.5 levels more than 10 times over the WHO recommended safe limit, which sounds like
it's a good picture of Delhi. You can't see a damn thing.
It looks like Beijing. Sorry,
it's worse.
Is it? I think Beijing was about 100 times the WHO limit in that recent. This is only 10. This is only 10. These fine particles, less than 2.5 micrometers in diameter, are linked to higher rates of chronic bronchitis, lung cancer, and heart disease. And the thing that I think of when I see that and think that's Delhi is the fact that the government says they're planning on doubling use of coal.
Yeah,
how in the world could they do that? I don't think they're honestly expecting to double the use of coal. I think they're just telling everybody that.
It's a game they're playing. They're playing chess.
Either that or they're playing Russian roulette. This is bad. And, as I did a little research on this, I read about the London pea soup fog of 1953, which set records, and they found that many thousands of people died in London because of pea soup fog during
Yeah. And what was causing it?
Coal. I guess, coal. The world's biggest demon is coal. No. All right, it's not the world's biggest demon, but
the World Health Organization has ranked Delhi, the most hazardous on the planet.
I find that pretty easy to believe. And again, you know, in China, what they've discovered about Beijing is that they can actually make the skies clear if that's what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And they know exactly how to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's shut down a bunch of industries and shut down the use of coal for burning power.
They've been doing that for short term.
For short term, they have
closing the schools.
Yeah, when they had a big parade there, that was a big May Day celebration or whatever it was. They
just recently, within the last week or so, they closed the schools.
They closed the schools, but when they had the big celebration, they said we want to have blue skies.
So they cleared.
Cleared the air out.
It sounds like something the Chinese do.
Well, they're very enterprising people. Probably the most profoundly capitalistic society in the world.
That's interesting. A little ironic.
But you know, what can I say? Okay. Back to the good old USA. The governor of Massachusetts is launching a $30 million residential solar loan program. The program is tuned for loans between $3,000 and $60,000 with low fixed interest rates and should help the state reach its goal of 1,600 megawatts by 2020. The state currently has 985 megawatts.
That's a lot.
It is.
That's a gigawatt, really.
Yeah, basically. This is WLNE TV ABC 6.
Wherever that is.
Wherever that is. We'd been worried about Massachusetts because they needed to have their state goals updated, and I'm not sure how this sits in all of that.
Well, according to this article, in 2014, Massachusetts was ranked 4th for solar megawatts.
Yes.
You don't think about that.
Yes,
you know,
that's
it's
right.
A lot of small stuff.
And New Jersey was right up there too. Mm-hmm. And you think, wait a minute, we're talking about an area that's
north,
fairly far into the north, cold, cloudy. And why isn't this happening well, it is happening in California. Why isn't it happening in New Mexico? In New Mexico, it's blocked by utilities. In Florida, it's blocked by utilities.
Yeah. The utilities have power.
They have power, and they're.
You know, it's not that they don't want it. They want it, but they want to control it.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. They don't want it distributed. They're being very undemocratic about this.
Exactly.
We don't want ordinary people to have what we have. We want to be an oligarchy. Okay. And now that I've spouted enough for the time being, our next slide actually comes from Minnesota. In Minnesota, a 3-year, $260 million emissions reduction project for the Boswell Energy Center's 585 megawatt Unit 4, Minnesota Power's largest coal-burning generating unit, is complete, finally. The update will reduce mercury emissions by 90% and reduce emission of sulfur dioxide and particulates. This is from the Grand Forks Herald. And when I read that, I felt an immediate sense of outrage, because we should not allow any mercury out of these plants.
That's a valid point. I mean, anybody who likes fishing is going to be on your side.
Yeah, this is stuff that gets into our land, it gets into our streams, it gets into our rivers, it gets into our environment. It makes it impossible for us to eat the fish that we catch in some of the streams, or any amount of fish that we would catch anywhere. You can't go into a pristine stream in Vermont and fish knowing that what you catch is going to be healthy for you to eat, because it might be loaded with mercury. You've got to check it out. And the stuff will not go away. As far as I know, there's no practical way of getting this stuff out of the water. So what they're doing is they're permitting people who have been dumping it into the water for years and years and years and years and years to dump more of it into the water for years and years and years.
They're really not dumping it into the water. They're dumping it into the atmosphere.
Yeah, and then it comes down in the rain. But even so, you know,
it's still getting there.
People allow them to get away with it because they don't see it happening on a day-by-day basis. Anyway, we are up to Monday, December 21st. And I want to get that off the screen. I'm going to put that up just for the fun of it. Opinion piece: boom times ahead for U.S. clean power thanks to the oil lobby. We're back to Congress. The intertubes have been intertubes. What are they? Have been buzzing with news of the new U.S. federal budget deal, which basically gave away the store to the clean power industry by including a 5-year extension of key tax credits for wind and solar power. This is Clean Technica, which, by the way, is not complaining about this. It sounds like it is from that wording, giving away the store.
Well, people are saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just reporting.
They're just reporting, and that thing that's on the screen there is unrelated to this story.
Well, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
I'll get back to you.
Again, we're talking about the question of what this is going to do for the wind and solar industries, and by extending those tax credits, it means they have something that they have needed for years, which is some kind of understanding of where the future is going.
Absolutely.
In terms of
they've been in limbo.
They've been in limbo. And what has happened over and over again is that they've been up against some kind of deadline, and they've had people putting in wind turbines and solar panels like mad because the deadline was approaching. The deadline comes, the deadline goes, the tax credits are not extended, and so they languish until the next time Congress gets together and says, well, we should...
I'm thinking this was all kabuki theater. They knew what was going on, and this was a preordained. They knew what they were going to do.
It might
they were
be,
going to give the fossil fuels something. They were going to give the renewables something. Tit for tat.
Yeah, and I think
sausages and laws are horrible things to watch being made.
I've heard that. Where did that come from?
I don't know. I didn't quite say it right. I think the first person I heard say that was Darryl Pillsbury.
Okay, all right. As long as it wasn't a guy named Hormel or something like that. Okay, that was from Clean Technica. Also from Clean Technica, a new solid-state sodium battery development project being researched at Iowa State University was awarded $3 billion in new building via ARPA-E's 2015 Open Funding Initiative, according to recent reports. ARPA-E stands for Advanced Research Projects Agency-Energy.
Now, I had a real problem with this one. I still have a problem conceiving of a solid-state battery.
I know, this is bizarre.
No liquid in it, no electrolyte in it. There is an electrolyte, but the electrolyte is solid.
How do you do that?
I don't
know. Well, we are living in a new age.
I have read about it. Here, I'm not going to go into it, but I have a paragraph I took from Wikipedia that explains it. But everything in the battery is solid.
Yeah.
But they are selected in such a way as to allow electrons to move quickly in one direction and ions to move quickly. How they've done it, I don't know, but
how do you do that? I don't know. You know, it makes me think of when I was in high school. I was taught, of course, when my mother was in high school, she was taught that it was not possible to break an atom.
Okay.
You couldn't divide an atom.
That's what the word atom meant.
Yeah, it was the smallest thing that you could have, so you can't divide it. Yeah. And she said, well, when she was in high school, they knew you could do that, but her science teacher hadn't got the word yet. Well, when I was in high school, I was taught that you could not remove ions or things that are dissolved, I should say, from solutions using filters. And now they can do that.
They can, huh?
They can do that.
Well, yeah. Nanocarbon and technology and stuff like that.
Well, they're using zeolite, which is something that I think they may have known about when I was in high school, but they had no idea what its ramifications were. And you know, today they use zeolite at Fukushima to run the water purification through, because it will capture cesium ions.
It will, huh?
Yeah, which is, it's like, how does it do that? Well, it's got a lattice, crystal lattice, and the crystal lattice has pockets in it, and the pockets are just exactly the right size to hold the cesium ion. And so they get stuck in there and they won't come out again.
How convenient, but you got to throw the zeolite away.
I don't know. Maybe you could backflush it. I just don't. I don't know. But, you know, we're living in a different world. And, you know, as I think about it, here is this thing, which weighs about 2 pounds. And one of these days, I will bring in a computer that was made, it's about that long, and it was made by Koeffel and Esser.
Oh, okay.
And show everybody.
Yeah, Troy, New York. Troy, New York.
Yes. Yeah. What the U.S. power grid, the big power centralized power stations and so forth were built using engineering that was done on slide rules.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean
everybody walks around campus with a slide rule on his belt.
That's right.
I mean, that's for real.
That's for real. And Koeffel and Esser, that was the best. But, you know, what we've got here is the ability to have programmed computers that do unbelievable amounts of work compared to those things. You can control whole industries with a little teeny machine like this.
Yeah.
And so the grid is an entirely different system because it can be computerized, among other reasons. Okay.
Well, I think we've mentioned this on a show. When I was in college,
yeah,
the campus computer was a building by itself.
Yeah.
And that computer you got is smarter and bigger in capacity than their one great big building.
When I was in college, I worked on the second computer ever installed in a liberal arts college.
Oh, yeah?
I think it worldwide, but it might be just the
Must have
United
been pretty
States.
progressive liberal arts college.
Very, when it came to computers, they were very progressive, and the reason that was the case was because they had some very computer-oriented work going on in places that were nearby, and that computer that they had cost $1.5 million used. The memory that it had was 16 kilobytes. 16 kilobytes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that...
What, did it run with punch cards?
They ran with punch cards. There was no keyboard except for the keyboard for punching the punch cards.
Yeah.
There was no monitor. There was a printer, but there was no monitor. And the computer required so much electricity that they had to have 3 air conditioners going to cool off the rooms that it was in, which had previously been a faculty apartment. And the memory was core. Core.
You mean iron core?
Iron core. Little donuts that had been stitched together by ladies living in Malaysia or China or something. And they cost, the story was that they cost $1 a piece when the computer was new. Somebody in the computer science place looked it up and they found out, in fact, it really didn't cost $1 a bit. It was
98 cents.
It was 40 cents. But, I mean, this computer has got 32 gigabytes of solid state drive and 2 gigabytes of RAM. That's 34 billion bytes. Each of 8 bits, although it might be 9. I don't know if they've got CRC bits, but we're talking about a 250 billion bits, and that in those days would have cost at $1 a bit.
It wasn't enough money in the world.
I think
in 10 years, that's going to be looked upon as primitive.
Oh yeah, but you know, before I bought this thing, I was actually thinking about a Radio Shack computer I used to have, which was a Model 100, and it would run for 24 hours on 4 AA batteries. And I thought, wow, it'd be nice to have one of those things again. And you know, it was roughly comparable to that original beast that I worked with. This thing weighs almost exactly the same amount as that Radio Shack Model 100. It'll run for 11 hours, but not on AA batteries. It's a rechargeable lithium-ion battery, and it's got 200 times as much memory, 2,000 times as much memory. It's an entirely different machine. Nevertheless, we should probably get away from that.
Move along.
And up to International Business Times AU, slide 9, which is that one.
This is interesting, too.
Yep. The Australian Renewable Energy Agency has provided $4 million to support toward a feasibility study for pumped storage at the disused Kidston gold mine in North Queensland. Genex Power Limited plans to use existing mining pits as water storage reservoirs.
This is pumped storage of water like they're using in Northfield.
Yes, that's right.
And they're using the
mining
mine
pits
as reservoirs. They must, looking at the picture, everything's on the same level.
Right.
They must be using something underground or something like that. They
Well,
got to have a height differential.
They have to have a height differential, but if they've got the right kinds of turbines, and they have multiple.
It doesn't have to be much.
Yeah,
as long as there's enough water.
Yeah, if they've got the right turbines and they've got multiple pits, they could pump from one pit to another.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And it's hard to know. I've read about mines being used where you pump the water into the mines, and these are deep shaft mines, and you get pressure out of them because the shaft is deep. I don't know what the efficiencies of these things are, but yeah, I had thought that same thing. This looks like everything's on the same level, but that pit, which is that oval-shaped thing,
that might be elevated. It might be on
well,
a little
it's
hill.
also, as I look at it, it's hard to see, but it looks like that has got roads kind of going round and round and round, going down it, and it's hard to know how deep that thing is, and it could be very, very deep.
That could be the answer right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Right along.
That one was from International Business Times AU. Our next one, a survey in South Carolina conducted by Citizens for Responsible Energy Solutions says voters not only expect renewable energy support from elected officials, they now demand it. 80% not only expect renewable energy 80% of South Carolina Republican primary voters think renewable energy sources should be prioritized.
I think you selected this one to make me laugh.
Why is that?
Well, I was reading about it, and every sentence starts with the word or includes the word Republican.
Yes.
It's just praising what the Republican government in South Carolina is doing. And it turns out it was published by the state, but it was written by the Republican, what do you call their headquarters?
Republican Party headquarters?
Well, yeah.
I picked this because I thought 80% of South Carolina primary voters, they're talking about Republicans here. And, these
they're going
people
for
renewable.
So they say.
And this is happening so much in contrast to what's going on in the Republican leadership worldwide, and it's really hard to it's really hard to guess what is these people have got on their minds.
Well, they're playing games. Clearly, I mean, it was a Republican puff piece. It really was.
Yeah.
In the comments, somebody from Columbia, South Carolina, obviously not a Republican, commented on it. It's short. I'll read it. Really? State newspaper? Publishing a rah-rah Republican propaganda piece from the chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party as though it was a serious column about progressive energy issues? From the party that denies climate change and works for and rewards big oil and big coal? From the party which has for years fought progressive energy parties tooth and nail? Seriously, what made the state newspaper think it had to provide a free and misleading political advertisement for the Republican Party?
Well, yeah, but the question is how misleading is this? Because if this was done by the Republican Party, what does that say about Republican politics in South Carolina and elsewhere, for that matter? Because we've got a bunch of people who are at the high levels of the Republican Party, people who are running for president.
Yeah. He just stopped. He quit yesterday.
Well, I was going to say, there was one of them who was not a climate change denier, and he just stopped. That was Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, he's probably the only one in the party.
I think he was the only one.
Maybe they threatened to kick him out.
They might have. My guess is that he was eliminated for the simple reason that he couldn't raise any money. And of course, there are various foundations and so forth that are supporting these candidates, and they aren't going to support him because he's in favor of of a
That could very
democratic
well be.
Approach to.
My sister lives down in South Carolina.
Oh, really?
It's a very Republican state.
It's very Republican, but
She's not, but it is.
if these people in that state at that level are representative of what's going on, and we've seen surveys of Republicans elsewhere where the majority of Republicans, a large majority of Republicans, 60% perhaps or more, believe in climate change, believe that it's important, believe more than that, believe that switching to renewable energy is important.
But it's not the party line.
But it's not the party line.
They're getting funding from fossil fuel people, and they don't want to cut it off.
That's right. That's right. So what does that tell you about who is bought, paid for, and in somebody's custody?
That's the way politics works.
That is the way politics works.
Well, we're pretty much through here.
We are
pretty
through,
much covered
and
everything.
we
You
have.
want to go back and touch base with anybody?
No, I think we're doing fine. This is a 5-day review of the news, and so I guess we got through it faster than usual.
We're short a day.
We're short 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
We usually do Thursday to Thursday. We did Thursday to Tuesday. We will be back in the new year. We're going to have to report on a 16-day period, which means we're probably going to have an average of 1 piece per day at most. But what I'm going to try to do during that time is put together our list of the most important,
best of the year.
The best of the year.
That would be an interesting.
We'll do a special on that. So I guess
we're probably going to be doing a 2-hour show when we come back.
We'll do 2 separate
shows,
1-hour shows, and we do that frequently. I don't think we'll have a guest on that. Maybe somebody will show up, but one thing that I could mention is I'm getting attracted to 2 things, and I plan on investigating them and writing about them. And one of them is things that you can use to do everyday living without electricity.
Were you talking about that?
No, I wasn't.
Somebody was talking about the Pennsylvania Dutch.
Yeah, I was actually.
That was you, yeah.
I was, yeah. Hand-operated blenders and
Yeah,
mixers
yeah,
and things of that nature, washing machines and all of this stuff you can do by hand, and a lot of it you can do fairly easily by hand. But that's one thing that I want to do. Another thing that I want to do is I decided to work on a new kind of solar system, which would be off-grid in an on-grid building. And my plan on that...
A microgrid within a building.
A microgrid within a building that serves part of the building. And what I want that microgrid to do, and I'm putting this out there in case somebody else wants to try the same thing. What I want that microgrid to do is I want it to collect power from sunlight, and I want it to store the power in batteries, and I want it to power 2 things in the building that I live in, which has 2 apartments, one of which is the propane furnace on the first floor, and the other one is the wood pellet stove. Wood pellet stove on the second floor. And the idea behind that is it would be on a separate electric system altogether.
Be independent of the grid.
Independent. And I'd have the outlets for that system close by the outlets for the other system.
So if you lose power, you still have heat.
That's right.
And if you want to plug something else in, you got something to plug it into.
That's right. And if you lose the battery storage system because the sun's been behind a cloud for a week, you can unplug the furnace from one and plug it into the other.
Well,
so that you're on.
Stoves are good stoves,
yeah.
But they have to be tied to power.
They do. Well,
so if you're doing this,
some of them have to be tied to power. There is actually a pellet stove that doesn't have to.
Is it really?
Yes, there is.
Is it solar or what?
No, it's got
batteries?
It's gravity powered.
Gravity powered?
That's right.
Okay.
Anyway, we are done.
I think so.
We've used up our hour.
43 seconds.
Yeah. See you all later. I got to get my hand on screen. There we go.
Gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.